Welcome back, everyone. This week we're talking communication strategies, focusing on the question, how can we pass along new information to our students? Our learning objective this week is that I would like you all to be able to identify strategies for communicating information with trainees. Specifically today, we're going to talk about emails and announcements, phone calls and voicemails, posters and displays, as well as training manuals and publications. Now, before we get into the specific strategies, I just wanted to talk a little bit overall about trainer-trainee communication and just a couple tips here. First tip, be as clear as possible. Right? Clarity is number one. Try to use language that your trainees will understand. Try to be as direct and clear with your instructions as you can, because it's really easy for people to misunderstand things. So we want to try to be as clear as possible. Following suit with that, be as efficient as possible, right? Less is more. If you can say something with a few bullet points or a few numbered instructions rather than writing several paragraphs, right? We want to do that. We want to be as efficient as possible. We want people to be able to quickly read our communications. So we always want to think less is more in this case, right? Try to be direct. Another tip, use signaling to highlight essential information. Okay, we're going to practice this a little bit in our assignment this week. But signaling, things like bold text, highlights, circling, right? If you have something really important that you're trying to communicate to people, signal that. Signal that that is the important or most important piece in that announcement or that how-to manual, right? Use signaling to highlight that essential info. Another tip, use repetition to highlight essential info. Okay, if something is important enough that you're going to signal it, it might be important enough to repeat, right? So consider that as well. Things that are really important, maybe they're appearing in that communication a couple of times, right? And finally, be mindful of tone, especially electronically. I'm sure you guys are out there in the working world. I know personally, I've worked with trainers that responded to my question in all caps, and I really took that the wrong way. So you really got to be careful of your tone. It's really easy for people to misread your intentions when we're talking electronic communication. So you got to really be careful that you're not coming off as aggressive or pushy or anything like that, especially electronically. All right, starting off with emails and announcements. This is a great way to get information out there on your training session or course. A lot of LMSs today are built around having both announcements and kind of their own mail system built in, like you guys can see in Canvas. We have a fully functional inbox, an outbox. We can send and receive messages in Canvas, and we can also use the announcement tool to pass things along. So I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty details of what these are. I think you guys are all well aware of what an email or an announcement is. I just wanted to talk instead about some pros and cons of this kind of communication style. And so first off, the pros. When you're sending emails and announcements, you have an electronic record. Okay, so that's definitely a pro. If you need to cover your basis and show that a training's been announced or sent out, you have a record of that. Or if someone maybe failed to live up to a certain training, but you have a record stating that the policy changed, right? At least we have a record of that. So that's good to have. Another pro, you can pre-schedule emails and announcements. Okay, so if you know that you're splitting your training section into 3 parts, you can build out those 3 announcements ahead of time and set them up to send out on your schedule when you need them. So that is nice to have. Another pro, emails and announcements are very easy to do on a large scale. Okay, if you have a training of 200-300 people, you'd probably much rather send out a mass email than have to have a phone call with each one of those individuals, right? So emails and announcements, they scale really well. So large scale, no problem. Now let's take a look at some cons. Emails and announcements, they are a little bit easy to miss, especially if that person has a very busy inbox. They're getting in a lot of messages. There's sometimes issues with spam filters and that sort of thing. So sometimes those emails or announcements do slip through the cracks. So that is one con. There are possible reply issues. Okay, I say in here, blind CC is your friend, or blind carbon copy, right? I've definitely had district-wide trainings where an email was sent out to everyone in our school district, and people kept replying to that post. So you just had this never-ending stream of replies for, it lasted, I think, a few weeks, where people kept replying to the reply all, and yeah, it can be an issue, especially in large corporations, large school districts, things like that. So when possible, use that blind carbon copy so people can't have that reply all issue, because it's definitely annoying on the trainee side of things. So, and finally, this one's more specific to emails, right? If you have people in your class, the announcement should go to them. But if you've collected their email in another fashion, maybe there's a typo in that email, maybe their email has changed, right? So then your ability to communicate is only as good as that email address. So we are a little email address reliant. So that might be a possible issue there. Next up, we have phone calls and voicemails. Probably a little more traditional way to contact people, but nevertheless, a solid option for communicating about your training. Some pros to using a phone call or leaving that voicemail. One, it's individualized, right? You're calling just that person. So you don't have a record of it automatically like email, but it does open up the possibility of keeping those records. Since you're calling that individual person, right, you could track that in Excel, or you could just make a note of it to the side, but you definitely can keep records of who you're contacting and when. So that is a pro there. The phone call itself allows for back and forth communication, right, as long as they pick up. This is nice if someone maybe has a quick question about the training or just one idea they wanted to bring up beforehand, right? It allows for that quick back and forth communication since both parties are on the line. Similar to email, but probably a little faster since you're already there on the phone with them. Yeah. Another pro, the phone calls and voicemails can be automated. A lot of school systems have this where they pre-record a message and then they send it out to all the parents. Right? You could do something similar with training systems where you can record a message about an upcoming training and then have that sent out to a lot of people using that automated system. So that is a possibility as well with phone calls. Some cons, some things that aren't as great. Let's take a look. Manpower costs, right? The person that's calling all of these trainees, that definitely is a factor, right? Especially if you have a lot of trainees, that might not be something you're looking to eat as a company, or maybe not something that you would like to do yourself, right? Maybe the manpower of calling all those people is a bit much, right? So something to think about there. Additionally, just like we talked about emails, phone calls are phone number reliant. Right? Your ability to communicate is only as good as that phone number. So if there's a typo in there, if that phone number has changed, or if that person doesn't pick up that phone number when they don't recognize incoming messages, right? That can all cause issues. So definitely some possibilities there to have issues with those phone numbers. Next up, let's talk about posters and displays. Okay, this is really useful in work environments where you just want to leave reminders on the walls, or maybe there's a display TV that cycles through a few important tips to remember, something like that. All right, so let's start with some pros. Posters and displays can serve as an ongoing reminder. Right, so it's something maybe that's important enough that you want people to read multiple times a day. Right, a poster's a great way to do that. Another pro, posters can be placed in multiple locations. So maybe the safety rules are important enough that you want them in every single classroom or every single workshop, right? Well, you can do that very easily with these posters. They scale well, and you can put them in different locations very easily. Once you have the layout done, it's easy to have multiple, right? Some cons for posters and displays. There will be some print costs associated with it, especially if you're doing physical posters. If you're doing color, if you're doing larger posters, those print costs can become significant. So it is something to think about. Additionally, anytime you update or replace information, that's going to have a cost to it. Maybe you have to reprint the whole poster, or maybe you have to just print a correction that you're going to cover up part of the poster, right? But that comes with a cost. You have to send people out to the site. You have to go to all the locations these posters are set up at and fix them, right? There's a cost to that. Another con, they're not individualized, so you don't have a record of your trainees taking in this information like you would a phone call or an email. Okay, so if you need those records, posters and displays, probably not a great option. Finally, we have training manuals and publications. This is probably the best option if you want to be really thorough and include a lot of information that you're communicating to your trainees. So some different pros here when we're talking training manuals or publications. They can serve as a written record of policy. Okay, so if your company has a specific policy, the way you want employees to do something, well, creating that training manual or instruction manual can be a written record of that. So that can be very useful, both legally and just so employees have a copy of that information. Training manuals and publications, you can make them as detailed as needed, right? These are a little more long form communication where an employee is not expected to consume that whole communication piece at once, right? They might go to this manual to look something up. They might go there to refer to a specific section, right? So you can be as detailed as needed because you know they're not going to consume the whole piece at once, okay? So you can include those details so that they can look them up as needed. Some cons as far as instruction manuals go. Once again, print costs can become an issue, especially if you want to have colored printing, if you want to have sturdier manuals, maybe that hold up at the job site, things like that, right? All of that adds to that cost. So something to be aware of there. Again, when we're updating or replacing information, right, that comes with a cost. We might have to reprint. We might have to print an adjusted section, things like that. So once again, all of that has a cost associated with it. And similar to before, if you're just making training manuals or putting out publications, okay, we're not individualized. We're not getting that record of what each trainee has received as a result of this training. So another con there. Okay, so that's all I have for you guys today. I just wanted to touch on some different communication strategies. I'm sure you guys are aware of a lot of these, so I didn't want to go too in depth. I just wanted to kind of talk about them. As for our knowledge check, you're going to practice making an announcement post. So you're going to make an announcement post that's going to contain a few things. It's going to be due next Monday, 11/10. For this knowledge check, you guys do not have to reply to your peers. So there's just a one way. You're writing an announcement post, and that's it this week. As far as what the announcement post should have, you should include the name of your training activity. You should include the date and time of the training. And I want you to highlight that with signaling, right? That might be bold text. That might be an alternative colored text. You might highlight. You might use a larger text size, right, etc. But I want you to make sure the date and time of your training stands out, right? We want to highlight that. We want our participants to come away knowing that information, or if they have to reference that announcement, they can quickly locate it, right? So make sure we're including our date and time of the training and that we're highlighting it using signaling. Okay, we're also going to include what participants should bring. Okay, it's fine to make this up if they don't actually need anything for your specific training, even if it's something to write with in a notebook and water or something like that. But I just want a short list of what the participants should bring. Okay, we should always address kind of those expectations of what they need when doing these announcements. Number 4, include a brief description of what the training activity will include. Okay, so whatever training activity you're working on as part of your ongoing projects, okay, we're basically writing an announcement for that, and we're letting our trainees know what that's going to look like. Okay, once again, trying to communicate those expectations ahead of time. And finally, number 5, I'd like you to include the date and time again towards the end of the announcement. Okay, so utilizing that repetition. The date and time, probably the most important thing in an announcement. So I want to see you signaling with it, and I want to see you repeat it. It's so important. Okay, so pretty standard assignment here. We're just going to make an announcement post. We'll post it as a discussion post, but you do not have to reply to your peers this round. But that's all we have. So hopefully you guys have a great week, and let me know if you have any questions on any of this.